Welcome to Mystery Fix, where we talk about making a good mystery great. And today I want to talk a little bit about suspects and how many suspects is the right number in a mystery novel. So you want to be good to your reader. You are creating a puzzle for them to solve alongside your sleuth. So choosing your suspects in the mystery novel begins when you flesh out your story and in the planning stages. And as you create your character Bible, adding suspects to your mystery novel, you aim for a balance between enough characters to challenge your sleuth and your readers and too few suspects. If your mystery has only 2 or 3 suspects, your reader won't feel challenged. You'll be challenged creating material to flesh out a novel of 65 to 80,000 words or so and sustaining that mystery with very few suspects. So your readers will find it hard to keep keep your suspects in mind. And if you have 10 or more suspects, you'll confuse your readers and they won't remember who's who and what's what and how they related to the victim and all that sort of thing. So, and they're reading along and they like ask questions like, which one was George? And was he the tailor or the neighbor? And when was he introduced? And what happens is you stop your reader in your story because instead of going on with the story that you're creating in your mystery, they're like, who was that? And they'd have to flip back and look and find out who was George. And that's something you never want to do. You never want to stop your reader from reading your story to go check information because they can put down your book and not come back because it was just too frustrating. So for an average length mystery between 65 and 80,000 words, you want to choose between 5 and 8 suspects. And then there's a way to introduce your characters that keeps them very, very clear in your reader's mind so they don't have to stop and flip back and go, who is that? So you want to introduce each of your suspects to the reader so they have a clear idea of the identity of the suspect and their context in the story. And each character forms an impression with your reader so they recognize that character as they appear throughout the story. So if they don't reappear till 5 chapters later, they instantly remember who that was and what their relationship to the victim was. So here's some tips about how to do that at the beginning so your reader doesn't get lost. Introduce each suspect separately. Your sleuth meets one suspect and he or she has a sense of who that person is as a person. So give your reader a sense of who that suspect is, how they communicate, how they talk, in the dialogue, and a visual clue to use as a quick refresher when the character appears a little later in the novel. It could be their hair color or the way they walk. This person always lumbers into the room. Whatever it is, it's one thing, one little clue that your reader is like, oh yeah, I remember him. So you can do that by using specific details for each suspect to help fix their identity in the reader's mind. So, and make these details specific to that suspect. For instance, if 2 of your suspects race bicycles, you want to give each one specific details that are completely separate from the other one so you don't have an overlap between the suspects, and that'll reduce your reader's confusion about who they are. So if you're up to 8 or 10 suspects, you want it very, very clear who each individual is in your story. And you want to give your reader a distinct name for each suspect, and create names that are unique to each suspect and that don't sound alike. And even if you can avoid starting with the same letter, that helps. So we've talked about that before, and it's very important when your suspect has been introduced and then comes back later in the story, and the name itself is like a reminder of who that suspect is and what their context is in your story. So spelling and sound need to be as different for each suspect as you can make it, and also avoid confusions like one character named Jim and the other named James. So, because Jim is a nickname for James. So you want to avoid things like that that will confuse your reader. And use story context to help readers identify the suspects. I know I talk about context a lot, and there's a reason. It's really important. When your reader understands how the character fits in your story, it really helps fixate that character in their mind. So how did that suspect know the victim? What was their relationship with the victim? Um, and how does that character interact with your sleuth? Because they're each going to respond differently to your sleuth. So all of those are clues for your reader that this is George and he acts this way, and he's a smart aleck, and he's tall, and he walks with a limp, or whatever set of details you've given to that suspect. You can bring them back so your reader instantly knows who they are. They don't have to stop reading, go back 50 pages and figure out who it is. You won't go wrong with using context for each suspect and then working out the details. Context is the most important thing about each of your characters in your story, because you can always change red hair to blonde. You just do search and replace, and all of a sudden the red hair is blonde. And you can always change their name if you have two characters whose names are very similar and can be confusing to readers. And I have done that. I changed a major character's name because it just sounded too much like another character's name. So you want to be distinct as possible and use the context as the hook for your reader, because your context helps your reader understand the suspect's role in the story. Okay, I'm keeping it short today, but this is very important. You want to individualize each of your suspects so your reader doesn't have to search back to figure out who they are. And you don't want too few because your mystery isn't going to be mysterious enough. And you don't want too many, and because that just confuses the reader. And that's something that beginning writers need to be careful about, is if they create a whole cast of suspects because they want to make it mysterious, they're not making it mysterious, they're making it confusing. So you want to narrow it down to 8 to 10 suspects. Even 5 is fine if you're doing a good job with creating the lies and the secrets that your suspects have, and using those as ways to baffle your sleuth and your reader. Okay, thank you. And be sure to support Mystery Fix with Patreon. You can click the link below, and for tiny micropayments a month, you can help support Mystery Fix and keep writing great mysteries. And I want to thank you for being here. And as always, ask me questions. And I will see you next time.